You start out with a little bit of oil, and you fry some garlic. Then you throw in some tomatoes, some tomato paste. You fry it. You make sure it doesn't stick. You got it to a boil. You shove in all your sausage and your meatballs. Huh? And a little bit of wine. And a little bit of sugar. And that's my trick.
From the round table at legendary Uncle Studios, welcome to another edition of WorkCom Matters, the central location for all of you employees, you employers, and of course you independent contractors. My name is Steve Appel, and I'll be your host for the next hour with some talk, some news, and hopefully some answers about WorkCom Matters. Thanks for being part of the show, and if you can break away from your WorkCom Matters, feel free to give us a call and clue us in with your questions, comments, and or concerns. The phone number worldwide, 818-357-4120. You can send me an email to wcexaminer@aol.com. You can even be old school. Send a fax to 818-475-1437. With me in studio, the Chief of Staff, Dr. Mike Zyma, the best-dressed man in workers' compensation, Ted Durden, attorney, Robert Ozeron, engineer, Scott Walton, and back at WorkCompcentral, making sure the whole damn thing goes right, is Jake Paris. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Work Comp Matters. We are full strength tonight. We are brought to you by A1 Law, Santa Monica Tickets, and of course ABC Rugs. If you want the #1 computer management system used by more workers' compensation attorneys in California than any other system in the Kuiper Belt, give me a call, 818-357-4120. And if you want those hard to get, sold out, yes, even front row, concert, sports, theater tickets, give our buddy Brian a call at Santa Monica Tickets, 310-395-8587. And here's a little something really quick from ABC Rugs. ABC Rugs has been in the business of manufacturing and direct importation and exportation of Persian and Oriental rugs for more than 39 years. ABC Rugs is a direct importer and wholesaler of antique, Moroccan, Oriental, and Persian rugs. Established in 1978, ABC Rugs is definitely old school. 323-897-5444. That's ABC Rugs. 323-897-5444. And that, of course, is for ABC Rugs. Got to give a special shout-out and a thank you to vocational rehabilitation extraordinaire Laura Wilson last week. Absolutely fantastic, her coming in to Uncle Studios. And that show with YouTube and WorkCompcentral has over 100 hits in the first week. But you know what? When you've got good material, even I can't screw it up. So thank you very much, Laura. Next week coming on the show, Mr. Mark Reed, running for the United States Congress, 30th District, against Congressman Howard Sherman, and so we're looking forward to that. So tonight's show, of course, is on recipes for success, and I discussed this with the guys in advance, and I said, you know what, give me your recipes for success, firstly, for your work life, and then, of course, every man, although he may not cook a lot, has his own recipe or two that he loves to cook, has been with him, is his signature recipe. And I wanted to take a moment and discuss my recipes for success. And then we will go ahead and go around the round table. Firstly, as far as my life recipes for success, the most important thing is to be prepared. I've said many times on this show, there is no such thing as luck. Preparation plus opportunity equals success. And regardless of if you're in workers' compensation, you're in a different field of law, you are in sales, you are in marketing, anything that you're in, you need to be prepared. And that means knowing your file and knowing what you know as well as what you don't know. I have never been afraid to say, I don't know, teach me, or I'm not sure, please go ahead and prove it up. And in that way, I not only am afraid not to admit ignorance, but I'm willing to learn. Those are my recipes for success as far as life and work. Just simply be prepared and be ready. Now, much more important, at least more in my life, I've always been proud of cooking for people when you come to my home. I've never talked about it on the show before, but anybody knows me. I would much rather invite people over to my home. Come on down to Woodland Hills, take a dip in the pool, relax in the piano bar, sit down. I will cook you at a minimum some appetizers, at least not a full meal. I wanted to talk about two things tonight. One is my favorite appetizer, and that is ahi tuna sashimi. We have a Sprouts Farmers Market near me, and they sell previously frozen ahi tuna. It comes in pound-size steaks. It's about an inch thick and maybe, 3 or 4 inches long and wide. And what I do is I buy about a pound steak, and I cut it into slices about between 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch, and I lay it out on the chopping block. I allow it to defrost, and then I throw on some soy sauce, and I throw on a little bit of garlic. I throw on a little bit of horseradish, and then last but not least, I take a lime wedge and give a nice squeeze.
You know, I got to say, I've been to the Casa de Appel before, and I've consumed that which you describe, and it is everything that you're saying it is.
And that is the appetizer. Thank you very much. Now for the main course. Casa de Appel ribs. Now you can use this same recipe for either beef or baby backs. I use baby backs. You take a rack of baby back ribs. You don't cut it up. You wash it, of course. Everything you buy from the market, the first thing you have to do is wash in cold water. I then preheat the oven to 375 degrees. I throw that rack or 2 racks into the oven for 375 for 45 minutes. Now, before I put it in, a little salt, a little pepper, a little garlic, and any type of rub that I do not put sauce on at first. That is key. Do not put sauce on. We throw it into the oven for 45 minutes at 375. Then we take it out. Some of the fat is dripped down. I take a brush. I brush the fat from the bottom of the pot or whatever, and I brush that onto the ribs. Then I put it back in, lower the temp from 375 to 350. I let it sit in there for 15 minutes. I take it out. I then brush some more fat from the bottom onto the ribs. I put it back in, and I lower the temp from 350 to 325. 15 minutes. Take that out after 15 minutes. Again with the fat and the brush. Put it in, lower it to 300. Do the same thing for 15 minutes, and eventually, again, last time, it comes out at 275 with the last brush of the fat, okay? I lower the temp to 250. So now we've been cooking without any sauce, with just salt, pepper, garlic, rub for 2 hours, okay? We then take it out, And then we pour out all the fat into the trash, and now we put on our barbecue sauce, and we put it in at 250. Or the other option is that you throw it on the barbecue. It's also at this time where you're at 250 where we take our rack, and assuming there's like 12 to 14 ribs in the rack, we then slice it out so there's 14 ribs there rather than one rack. We throw a whole bunch of sauce on it, and either you throw it in for another 15 minutes at 250 or you throw it on the barbecue and you cook it with the sauce.
Any special kind of sauce?
Well, I like hickory honey, but whatever you want, any type of barbecue sauce.
No particular brand name.
And it's ready in 15 minutes. And so you've been cooking for 2 hours and 15 minutes. It's tender. I don't want to say it falls off the bone, but any of you old school people that have false teeth, it's probably not going to drag them out of your mouth. It's totally cool. And it is tasty, and everybody loves it. And it's absolutely wonderful. Those are my recipes for success for both work and in food. And now it's time to talk to the other guys. So we're going to hear his recipes for success. He's my chief of staff. He keeps me in check and hopefully out of trouble at least 90% of the time. Dr. Michael Zima.
I like to keep it short. I always say the eloquence is in the brevity. I got life, work, and food. Life, make sure all is right with your immediate family. Kids, don't just do good in school. All else will follow. Wife, make sure the kids are okay. See above. Work, quote, there's a lot to be said for mindless enthusiasm. It's one of the quotes I heard from my brother a long time ago. I like to think it's like being a good ball player. Prove you belong every game, every day. Best compliment one can receive is that one's coworkers and superiors know one is a gamer. Home runs are nice, but at least move the runners up. 'Tis better to get thrown out at second than picked off first. Food. One word, Gołąbki.
What?
Gołąbki.
What the heck is that?
I was going to say Gesundheit.
Well, it's spelt even weirder. It's Golabki, and it's pronounced Gołąbki. It's basically Polish cabbage rolls, which are essentially all Eastern European ethnicities have a version of cabbage rolls, and all over the place too. And so I recommend learning how to make them. Try to prepare a batch at least twice a year. Invite friends and neighbors, and that's in a nutshell.
Hey,
life,
baby,
work,
is it
food.
anything like stuffed cabbage? Because stuffed cabbage is a Jewish delicacy.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask when you said, cabbage rolls, are they stuffed with something?
Yes. They're probably close to what.
I think it's a Polish delicacy as well. It's kind of a European thing.
So it's an Eastern European thing, so it's kind of the same.
Yeah. Sometimes they eat it with sour cream, right? That's what I've seen.
I was going to say sauerkraut.
Well, pierogies are eaten with sour cream. That's like apples and oranges. Pierogies are good too, but I don't know how to make them.
That's all Eastern European culture.
Yeah, Eastern European.
All right, so Mike, have you got more? Or
No, that's it.
No, you're all good. Okay, all right, very good. Continuing on with recipes for success. Well, he's the best-dressed man in workers' compensation, and most recently, the voice of reason, Mr. Ted Durden.
Well, life, work, and food. For me, the recipe for success in life is you need to play hard as well as work hard.
Actually, play hard, work harder. But please continue.
I'll save the for later.
Thank you.
But anyway, I think it's important to have a good balance with the two. Maintain a sense of humor. Don't take everything too seriously, and of course, integrity above and beyond all else.
Gotta love that. That is awesome. And what about your food recipe?
Well, let me get to work too.
Oh,
now,
no, please. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. As far as work is concerned, it's almost the same thing. Maintain your integrity. Never compromise that for anyone or for anything, because especially in the business that we're in, integrity and trust is paramount. because we deal with a variety of people and personalities every day. You see the same people over and over and over again. And if they feel that you have no integrity, then you won't be successful in work, period. Now, on to food. Now, one of my favorite appetizers is something that's very simple, but it is so delicious, and that is an endive sweet potato salad. Now, what you do is you take an endive leaf, and me, it's all about presentation. I prefer an endive leaf that has been sitting for a while so that the edges are a dark, rich green. What you then do is you'll take a sweet potato or yam, take it and dice it up into 1/4-inch pieces. You'll take that and put it in a frying pan with some olive oil and bacon.
I am getting hungry.
And some green onion. You saute those. And what that does, of course, is it softens up the sweet potatoes, and you put some seasoning in there. So once that's done, you set that off to the side. Then you make yourself some creme fraiche. Then what you do is you spoon the sweet potato concoction, which is the sweet potato, the bacon, and the green onion, onto the edge of the endive leaf. Top that with some creme fraiche, and there you go. Fantastic appetizer, simple, but
What is
absolutely
creme
delicious.
fraiche?
And what is the
Sour
endive
cream.
leaf? I've never heard of the endive leaf.
Well, the endive it's a lettuce, but it's a narrow. It's the one that tapers at the end. Most of the time when you see them in the store, when they first get them in, they're very pale yellow on the end. But as it ages, it turns into a rich, lush green. So, and I say endive, that's the French pronunciation, Belgian endive. Some may say endive. I just say endive.
And I have never in my life heard of the pairing of sweet potato and bacon. Have you guys heard that? I've never
No, but
heard
it
that
sounds
before.
fantastic.
It sounds awesome. I've never heard of it before.
It is a fantastic complement to each other. I prefer using pork bacon. You can use turkey bacon, but the seasoning, the smokiness from the bacon combined with the sweetness of the sweet potato, it's just to die for.
Let me say right now, a lot of people do not eat pork. I do, but when you take the flavor of pork, and I know that pork fat, I mean, you don't want to have too much of it, but if you're able to drizzle pork fat, whether it come from bacon or ribs or whatever, onto anything else, it's absolutely magnanimous.
Oh, yeah, that's why in the last probably 3 years, everything was made with pork, because it's just like everything tastes better with bacon. So you'd have bacon and mashed potatoes and all sorts of things.
Bacon wrapped scallops. Oh, my goodness.
Absolutely.
Oh,
And they did that on filet mignon for what, dozens of years. That's
bacon wrapped filet mignon. Absolutely.
That's a staple. Absolutely. Now, on to my next favorite food, which is ribs. Now, with my ribs, being an old Southern boy, you know, we in the South, we take pride in our ribs, just like we do in our grits. But anyway, I digress.
We take pride in our grits. That's from the movie 1992, Joe Pesci.
My cousin Vinny.
My cousin Vinny. We take pride in our grits. Please continue.
So what I do is I first do a cold marinade, because see, in the South there are two ways to prepare ribs. You can do a barbecue rib with your barbecue sauce, or you do a rub. Now I prefer to do a rub, because a rub done properly is almost like a barbecue sauce. So what I do is in a bowl, in a steel bowl, I'll mix up about 12 different seasonings. And the seasonings are comprised of cumin, paprika, garlic, onion, chili powder, brown sugar, kosher salt, cayenne pepper, black pepper, and white pepper. And sometimes I'll put in a little añejo chili in there. Ooh. So I blend all of that up. And now the first thing I do when I get my ribs, and I prefer to use the St. Louis style, I peel my ribs. Now what that means is, if you take a look at the back of a rib, you see that very thin layer of skin.
Yes, that's right. Go ahead.
You peel that off.
Really?
When you do that,
I've never done that before.
Well, no. When you do that, and when you season both sides, that seasoning gets forced not just through the top, but through the bottom of the rib. So that's why I peel that off. Now, once I do that, and even before I put my seasoning on, one very secret to it to help the ribs become tender, I rub it down with olive oil.
There
Yep.
you go.
Yep.
There you go.
So
There you go.
Rub it
You
down with
gotta do
olive
that.
oil. So now I've got all my seasonings that I blended in. And then I'll rub that on very generously. Then I'll wrap it up in parchment
in
paper.
what?
No,
Oh,
in
parchment paper?
parchment paper. Because you don't want to wrap it up in saran wrap, because if you do that, you
Because
pull it
that'll
off.
catch fire or burn.
Well,
or
no.
whatever.
When I'm saying on a cold marinade, because when
Okay.
you do that, all the seasoning comes off.
Okay.
Okay, now, once I do that, I let it cold marinate for an hour or two. Now, when I pull it out, here's the real cheese, as we say. What you do is I take a bowl of brown sugar.
There you go.
You pack it onto the
Really?
top of the rib.
How thick? How thick?
No, it probably about an eighth of an inch, because
Okay.
about an eighth of an inch, and you do it more so on the top, not so much on the bottom. So then I put that on the grill. Now, most grills, and this is really important, the way the grills are designed, there's a cold side and a hot side. So I'll start the ribs out on the hot side just to kind of get it going, not on a very high heat, almost on the lowest temperature. And you'll see to be graphic, when the blood starts to pool up a little bit at the top.
Right.
Because one of the things that you want to get with the ribs, you want to get that char on the bottom.
Absolutely.
Because believe it or not, that char adds flavor to the meat.
Of course it does.
So then once you do that, and then you're right, Steve, you have to babysit it. So you then take it and move it to the cool side.
There you go.
And if you have a smoker, that will help too. And you just keep an eye on it.
You mean you've gone from a barbecue to a smoker? I've never done.
Oh, no. You can. Oh, absolutely. I've done that before too.
No
Yeah.
kidding.
Yes, you can. Because
Wow.
again, the smoker is just a slow cook. That's all it is.
No, but it's a totally separate
Yes,
cooking
it is.
device.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But it's still drawing heat from the grill.
Right,
Because
right.
most of the time smokers are attached to the grill. So then if you put it on the cooler side and just keep monitoring it, you don't put any sauce on it. And what happens is that sugar starts to crystallize and liquefy.
The sugar on the top.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So, again, that's why you have to keep it on it, because, again, once that starts to drip, it can catch fire. So you have to be very careful. Now, I had never made this for my kids. And I remember when I made it, my son bit into it, and he asked me, Dad, what kind of barbecue sauce is this? No, son, that's not barbecue sauce. That's good old North Carolina rub. That's what that is. That's what that is. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest compliments that I got to the ribs that I made is I was actually involved in a rib contest.
Where?
Where
What city?
It was actually in Memphis.
Okay.
Oh, a Memphis rib contest.
Yeah, and you can imagine the ribbing I took, because I was from California. And I said, no, you guys don't understand. I'm a Southern man. No. You have to understand my game. So there was probably about 100 people there. There were 3 judges that were flown in, and we had to throw everybody out of the house as me and the competitor. We were doing our rib thing. And I remember as I was plating the ribs for the judges, and one of the guests were there and asked if they could come in, and they said, well, look, we've had her ribs before, we've never had yours. Would you mind if we try? So one of the guests, and it was a woman, I can't remember her name, she grabbed one, she bit it, and this is exactly what she said. She said, ooh, I think I'm going to cry. That's how good they were.
So you won the contest.
Oh, yeah, I won the contest. Yeah,
There
absolutely.
you go.
Nice.
All
So anyway,
right.
so
Yeah.
my recipes for success.
There we go.
All right. That was awesome. And Ted, I'm salivating, and I know you and I have gone out to dinner and lunch
Right.
and breakfast before, but you've never come over to my house,
Right.
and I've never come over to your house.
Right.
And I'm going to say right now, you have an invite to come over to my house. I want you to cook your ribs on my barbecue.
I would love to do that, man. I would love to do that.
You have an open invitation, my friend.
Okay.
With the next recipe recipes for success. He's my protege. He's been an attorney for almost 6 years. He represents applicants, and with his recipes for success, attorney Robert Ozeron.
All right. Well, thanks for the introduction, boss. So my understanding is it's kind of like 3 recipes that we've been doing here. One for our general life, one for our work life, and one that we're going to eat.
As usual, you hit the nail on the head, my son.
I have to be very specific. I'm bullet point format type of attorney. So I have to say for my recipes for life, just be grateful. for everything you have. You know, there's always someone with more, and a lot of people always with less. I think that's something to remember, that every day is a blessing. And if you really understand that, if you appreciate it, you know, sometimes you got to contrast your life to others. I think that would be a recipe for success. And that's kind of how I try to live my life. As far as work goes, you have to be passionate about what you're doing. You have to love what you're doing. I couldn't imagine doing something where I'm not helping others on my own shingle. It's so difficult.
You've been offered hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to work for the defense, and you've refused, correct?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've received a lot of offers in my life for a lot of things, you know, and I've picked what I thought was best for myself. And one of the big factors in the work life for that has been just doing what you love. I couldn't imagine punching a clock for an insurance company. Not that I don't think it's not a noble pursuit, and they need representation too, and it's a good job, and you get to practice your law. But for me, you know, I don't know what to say. My parents are immigrants. I'm a family of immigrants, and it's just kismet, you can say, for me to be an attorney where I would represent immigrants mostly and the common working man, just like where I came from. So that for me is very important. It's a drive, you can imagine. So, and then for food, wow. Firstly, I also had a recipe for ribs, but I'm not going after Ted. Right? I didn't win no Memphis cook-off. All right? What is that about? You know, it's like a story. Okay, first of all, I'll tell the story that I know a guy who won a Memphis cookout. But, so I actually grill a lot. I'm pretty proficient as far as cooking goes. I've been on my own, living on my own for quite some time.
All right, so what was the last meat that you grilled?
Chicken, of course.
Okay.
I try to keep it healthy.
Do you grill fish?
Depends. You know, you don't really grill fish as much as I would have like a tuna steak, and I would sear it.
Because
but that's a slightly different story.
Fish falls apart on the barbecue grill.
It depends, actually. You can figure out a way to sear it quickly. Correct.
Or what you can do is, because of the fact that like fish generally has no flavor, what you do is, like for instance, if I'll do a salmon steak, there's a mango chutney that I make, but I'll put that in some tin foil, and then I'll put some seasonings around the fish, around the salmon, and then I'll wrap it in the tin foil and again put on a low heat, and that seals everything in.
That's how you do it with fish. You wrap it in the really quickly. What is a chutney?
No, chutney.
Fine. What is a chutney?
A chutney is just it's like another word for like a salsa.
Oh, okay. So
it's just different fruits and vegetables that you put together.
Is it hot?
It can be. I generally
depends on how
don't
much
make
you
it.
spice it up, right?
Depends how your life is going.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Depends how your life is going.
So Robert, continue.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I would probably say I grill a lot. I've cooked a lot. Nowadays, now that I'm an attorney, I'm actually ordering a lot of food. I'm getting kind of lazy. I'm sorry. But if I had to make one thing, like my life depended on it, you came over, I probably would grill you some chicken. And maybe some pasta and like a Mediterranean salad, something nice and light.
Do you marinate it in a sauce, or do you do a
chicken should be marinated for a couple hours before, but not too long. You shouldn't be doing it overnight.
What is your marinade?
Well, it depends. Usually, it's some sort of ginger sesame concoction, something that's sugar. Depends if I'm buying it over the counter.
Where's the liquid? I'm not hearing any liquid on the marinade because that sounds like a rub.
Well, no, there's like the Trader Joe's, for example, has an over-the-counter sesame ginger. That's really good.
Gotcha.
But it depends if you want to do it on your own. You can. I'm not that. I don't have that much free time to do it or energy, but I would love to be more into cooking if I could. But I would probably do that. I don't know how to explain this, but I'm sure the gentlemen around the table do. I have like an internal clock in my head when it comes to putting things on the grill. I don't know how else to explain it. I will know with my nose when the food is done, not just chicken, steak, whatever it is. My friends, it's like a weird trick that I have. It's like a parlor trick. I don't know how I do it, but I can walk into places and smell what they're cooking and the status of the cooking, as in if it's done, if it's not done yet. I don't know how. I've just done it a long time. And that's why I think I would probably just grill you something, and everyone compliments me on my chicken. They say, oh, it's hard to get a grilled chicken that's also juicy on the inside, blah, blah, blah. I don't know necessarily what I'm doing too much. I could smell it. I don't know how else to say it.
Do you wrap it?
Depends if I'm baking it. Then I put it in tin foil, and I would put it in my aluminum foil.
When you grill it, you don't wrap it.
No, you don't. You want to make sure that the grill is already hot, right? You don't want the chicken to have to stick to the grill, so you might have to pre-oil the grill.
There's a olive oil on the grill.
No, not olive oil.
No?
There's hot grill oil that's specially for grills.
And actually, Pam makes a spray.
Well, that's a spray.
Oil.
That's exactly what I use, actually.
And they make different flavors for Pam spray, too.
Yes, they do.
And for steaks and things like that, because I used to do ribs and a lot of meat, too, but as I've gotten a little health conscious about trying to be cleaner in my food, so I eat more chicken. I used to get at these wood chips that you could actually put into the grill. I don't know if you
wood chips are awesome.
Well, yeah, and they have different types. Well, there's different flavors, right?
There's different flavors to the wood chips.
So you can also put rotten apples in there as well.
Now that I didn't know.
I didn't know about the rotten apples.
The wood chips are normally made for smokers, but you can also do them on the barbecue or the grill.
They're special. Yeah, you can do them. And that's probably it. I would make you a balanced meal, something light. People like my cooking generally, but it seems that more recently, as my practice has gotten busier and I focus more on my work life, my cooking's decreased.
Yeah, I mean, if you're an applicant attorney, you have your own ticket, you're working 60, 80, sometimes 100 hours a week, who knows? You don't have time to cook, so you're going to order out, you're going to order in, whatever the heck it's going to be. My name is Steve Appel. You're listening to Work Comp Matters, and it's time for a segment from Germany. He's a 45-year workers' compensation attorney. He still has his ticket to practice in California, but for whatever reason, he's hanging out in Munich, Germany, with his take on recipes for success. Attorney John Scalia.
Hi, this is John with the Work Comp International Report from Munich. This week, Steve has asked us to talk about favorite recipes for home cooking and recipes for success in practicing law. So we'll begin with the home cooking. I have really two favorite recipes. One is pasta and one is steak. For the pasta recipe, I prefer to have a freshly ground chuck, which I cut into very fine pieces. Prepare my pan with oil, bring it to a heat, put in the ground chuck with appropriate seasoning, and let it simmer till it's almost brown. At that point, I pour in the pasta sauce and I let it simmer while I prepare the pasta. The pasta I cook to al dente, which means more crisp than what you normally get in a restaurant. And when it's ready, I mix the two and I have spaghetti with meat sauce. I prefer a Chianti or a Primitivo with the wine, perhaps a Merlot for the wine. The other recipe is steak. Yeah, good old American steak. This weekend I had a good old American steak. Actually, my steak came from America. That's a very simple recipe. I like my steak rare, so it doesn't take that much to cook it. I put in the appropriate seasoning. When I cut the steak on the plate turns red. I have a nice Cabernet Sauvignon with the steak. And I also have salad with both meals, where I have fresh lettuce, freshly cut tomatoes, mushrooms, cucumbers, and some onions with whatever particular dressing strikes my fancy at the day. Now, what about a recipe for successfully practicing law? That begins with preparation. When I would meet a client for the first time, I would always tell them, it doesn't matter how good a lawyer you are. If you're not prepared, you are not going to win. I think I'm a pretty good lawyer. I have a very solid opinion of my intelligence, my legal abilities, et cetera, but as I would tell the client, if you go into court unprepared, then you're going to lose. If you meet a lawyer that says he or she has never lost a case, I would tell them you're probably either dealing with a pathological liar or the greatest lawyer on earth. And I can tell you where I think the odds are. So preparation is the key. But what does preparation mean? One, the first thing about preparation is to listen to the client. The client is in your office because things have happened which mean they need legal intervention. And things are not going either as smoothly as they thought they would go or how they thought they should go. So they're in your office because there's a problem. However, they are going to have a unique perspective on that problem. They are your client. So let them tell you what they think the problem is and how they think the problem occurred and what they would like to have as a solution. Let them talk, okay? That way, first of all, they will feel better. And secondly, you will learn, hopefully, most of the relevant facts. Once they have done that, your job is to explain to them which of those facts are relevant and important in the way the case is going to play out. So you can explain to them the context in which you can put all those facts and explain to them which of them are going to be important and how you're going to go about trying to resolve them in their favor. Once you've done that, the next thing you have to do is to prepare the client. If the client has to go on the stand, you have to make sure that they testify well. In fact, I represented LA County Sheriff's and LA Police Department. Both those agencies actually have training courses for the cops so that they know how to testify. You will not be able to do that as extensively, but you will be able to make sure that your client understands the importance of testifying well on the stand. You can even be very graphic about it. I've actually told clients, look, I don't care if the other attorney accuses you of bestiality. Maintain your cool, maintain your calm, answer coolly, calmly, composedly, and you will impress the judge. Finally, you have to know the law. Why do I put that last? Well, because in most cases, it's just a question of applying the law, not making the law, not changing the law. Those are rare cases. So you do have to know the law. You have to know how it's applied. You also have to know the judge. That's important. I had a very liberal judge once who did not like psychiatric claims. And when I represented insurance companies, I would try those cases in front of him. I'm sure most of my contemporaries thought I didn't know what I was doing because he was a notoriously liberal judge. But I usually won because I knew what his attitude was. So that is also one of the important facts, is to know the judge. So in summary, listen to the client, know the facts, explain how the facts need to be structured and how they're important, and prepare the client and know the law. That's the view from Munich this week.
And John, thank you very much for being a valuable contributor to the show. My name is Steve Appel. You're listening to Work Comp Matters. We're brought to you by A1 Law, Santa Monica Tickets, and ABC Rugs. It's time for a musical interlude. He's La Familia. He's Glenn Laughlin. He's the Cherry Blue Storms, and Baby, You're a Rich Man.
How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people? Now that you know who you are, what do you want to be? And have you traveled very far, far as the eye can see? Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. You keep all your money in a big brown bag inside a zoo. What a thing to do. How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people? How often have you been there? Often enough to know. What did you see when you were there? Nothing that doesn't show. Baby, you're a rich man. Man too. You keep all your money in a big brown bag inside a zoo. What a thing to do. Baby, you're
Lachlan on Work Comp Matters with Baby You're a Rich Man. My name is Steve Appel, and we're brought to you by A1 Law, Santa Monica Tickets, and ABC Rugs. It's time for some news stories. Catherine Williams Dodd is appointed to the Workers' Compensation Appeals Board Commission. California wildfires are in the news. Homeless tents in San Francisco. Homeless vehicles in Los Angeles. USC names temporary president. Insurance for Uber drivers is at issue. There is an audit with the Department of Motor Vehicles. Uber Technologies is in the news. Reality check for electronic driver's assist systems, and a bunch more. With the first news story of the night, he keeps me in check and out of trouble at least 90% of the time. He is the Chief of Staff, Dr. Michael Zima.
Governor Jerry Brown announced Monday that Catherine Williams Dodd, 29, of Napa, has been appointed to the California Workers' Compensation Appeals Board, a position paying about $154,000 a year and requiring Senate confirmation. Dodd has served as the governor's Deputy Legal Affairs Secretary since 2017. She was Assistant General Manager and Corporate Secretary at Frog's Leap Winery from 2016 to 2017. And folks, I just want to say that I did a bit of Googling, and there's more to Dodd than just being a corporate secretary at Frog's Leap.
Really?
Yes.
Tell me more.
Well, she's a graduate of McGeorge Law School. She's a licensed attorney, and she's the center of apparently a fairly prominent state senator named Bill Dodd out of Napa.
Okay. That is very interesting. California's wildfires are releasing millions of metric tons of carbon into the air. How bad is it? Scientists just don't know right now.
The number of tents on San Francisco streets has been cut by more than half in the past 2 years. But despite the shrinking numbers, the street behavior by the homeless, the mentally ill, and the drug-addled continues to be a challenge with no quick solutions in sight, according to the city's Department of Homelessness and Supportive Services.
The LA County Board of Supervisors voted unanimously Tuesday to create a pilot program to assist folks living in vehicles and to reduce the hazards associated with vehicle dwelling. The program will consist of outreach to people living in cars, vans, and RVs to connect them with social services, money to discourage the use and reuse of dilapidated RVs as dwellings, and a solid and hazardous waste collection program, including free containers.
The University of Southern California appointed retired aerospace executive Wanda Austin to temporarily run the university while searching for a permanent replacement for outgoing president C.L. Max Nikias.
A risk management official for Uber Technologies Incorporated said the company's program to provide benefits for injuries sustained by its drivers is an important first step to establishing benefits for these drivers, but affirmed that the program is not workers' comp insurance.
Now a story about Tesla. Tesla stock closed nearly 11% higher yesterday after CEO Elon Musk tweeted he's considering taking Tesla private at a price of $420 per share. After Tesla stock initially spiked following the tweet, some investors began to wonder if Musk was joking about the offer, as the number 420 is associated with marijuana. A price of $420 per share would value Tesla at or around $71 billion. That's a B in billion, making the potential leverage buyout one of the largest in Wall Street history. Got to stop the news. Got to ask Robert because, he talks occasionally about finances. What do you think about the Elon Musk 420 offer?
I actually didn't know too much about it, so I couldn't really comment. But $71 billion for Tesla doesn't seem to be an unreasonable number, so I don't see why it would be a joke.
He says he's got financing.
Why won't people just ask him rather than try to figure out what he's saying? Yeah. I think an interesting news story that I want to talk to you guys about was the Alex Jones getting kicked off of Facebook and YouTube, right? He's and I believe so they're banning...
I've never heard him, but he just sounds like a wacko. I hate to say that, but he just sounds like a wacko dude.
And he is a kind of a crazy guy, for sure. He's a conspiracy theorist, and you can call him alternative media, if you like. But the question, of course, is that he spreads a lot of conspiracy theories that are now not allowed to even be promoted on a certain platform. So, he got kicked off of Facebook. I think he's still on Instagram. Twitter is still allowing him to tweet, and they're responding to a lot of criticism about that.
Yeah, they got a lot of splaining to do.
Yeah, I think their CEO said, I think their CEO actually just came out with a news story. I could have pulled it up, where he answered why he's still allowing Alex Jones to be on his platform. But I wanted to ask all of you, because I don't know if the limit of free speech, if you know, by these companies, right? Because you're on their platform, so they can limit what you say.
Yeah, it's their proper.
Yeah, but what's interesting is the type of content that they choose to regulate seems to be inclined in a certain political affiliation.
I agree with that.
And that is very scary, because we have already handed over.
But Jones is a wacko.
But that's the question.
Mike.
First, they come for the unreasonable people, right? And then they'll come for then they start moving the line. The question is whether you can say what you want to say or not.
Mike, you don't comment on social media at all.
I've never been asked.
Okay, I'm asking you now.
What are you asking me?
You never comment on social media.
Well, because I'm generally ignorant of it, because I'm not connected to it.
Well, here you go. I'm asking you to join Facebook, friend me, and comment.
I would never do that.
My point exactly.
So this guy's program on Facebook, because he also has something on YouTube, and it's called InfoWars.
InfoWars is his program. So he's trying to promote InfoWars on many different platforms.
He's got a lot of different stuff out there. I've Googled him extensively today.
But it's really InfoWars. This is the alternative show that he runs, where he makes very outrageous claims. You might have seen that one.
That Sandy Hook was a phony?
No.
Occur?
Yes,
that's one of them.
That one, yes.
Yeah, but
he's
also
a Holocaust denier too, isn't he?
I think he may have some of that in him. I know he accused the government of making weapons that cause people to be homosexual, right? And that there's that very famous quote of him saying, "They're making the frogs gay." Remember that? That's like the one thing that everyone knows about him, is that outrageous quote of him accusing the government of making frogs gay. So obviously this gentleman is out there, right? But that's not the question. We all could agree on that. For some reason, he's got an enormous following. And now that they're trying to shut him down, the following has become more intense.
But
right?
they're not shutting him down. He still has numerous outlets.
Well, they're all run by the same, conglomerates of tech companies here. They're all run by Google or Facebook. Facebook runs Instagram, right? That's one of their sub companies. So the fact that he's banned right now off of Facebook, the Instagram one will be coming.
He's got a program off of, I believe it's called Genesis Communications, that's got nothing to do with those entities that you cited.
I think that might be a more local program, right? Like a radio
Possibly.
program? Yeah. What his real following was on YouTube, where he received hundreds of millions of views from across the world. And that's run by Google, as you know. And Google has now shut him down. YouTube has shut him down. So...
Well, see, I look at it like this. To me, it's very simple. I mean, free speech, I believe, is paramount. But if you have a privately held company, Google or Facebook, it is a private company. It's no different than a country club. They get to choose who they want to allow in. So if you have someone out there that's spouting information or disseminating information that's false or inflammatory or like it's just outrageous and crazy, then that private company has a right to say, we no longer want you on it. Now, that doesn't stop you from standing out on the street corner, yelling at the top of your lungs, whatever it is that you think or believe in, no matter how outrageous.
As long as you're not yelling fire in a movie theater.
So
exactly.
Yeah, okay, so we know that this is a private company, but the problem with this is they originally opened the gates to everybody, right? And we handed over our online social life to them. And now that everyone is inside the theme park, they're starting to change the rules. And it's scary.
I didn't hand over my private life to them. You're just kind of speaking Greek to me.
Well, perhaps not you, but you're not really on social media at all, correct?
Correct.
Okay, but for the hundreds of millions of people who have signed up under the pretense of one certain way of doing business, which is it's open season. Now it's becoming more constrained, and I get that. It's growing bigger, and they need to have more rules policing it, and that I understand. But for example, do you guys know who, I think her name is Candace Owens. She's a young black lady who's a conservative on Turning Point USA.
Yes.
Nope, never heard of her.
Okay, she's a very well-spoken young
Candace
lady.
Jones?
I believe Owens.
Owens, thank you.
And in fact, she was recently the victim of angry mob violence that looked very scary by a bunch of white racists who called themselves anti-fascist, Antifa. It was on the news, but that's a different story altogether. She, on Twitter, posted word for word verbatim, except change the word white people to Jewish people, a quote from a New York Times editor, Sarah Jong, and she was immediately banned for hate speech. But if you direct that same quote, and it was a verbatim quote, she just replaced the subjective with white people, it was totally okay, right? So it was a huge double standard that you could be racist against white people, and it's fine. Hate speech is allowed as long as you're hating what we perceive to be the haves versus the have-nots.
But
right?
it's not allowed on Facebook, according to Mark Zuckerberg.
No,
right?
it is.
No, I
That's
thought hate speech. I thought he said hate speech is not allowed on Facebook.
That's the joke. Hate speech matters who you're directing it at, right? If I say all white people should be dead, that's fine, according to Facebook, according to Twitter. But if you replace it with black people, you are screwed. If you replace it with Jews, any minority, it's over. You're speaking hate speech now.
Ted, do you agree with that sentiment?
No, he's absolutely...
No, I mean, do you agree that Facebook is that way?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Thank you.
And I'm going to tell you, it's not just Facebook. It's going to be on any platform that you speak of. Because anytime that you say anything derogatory or negative or adverse against anyone that is perceived as a minority, and that could be Jewish, that could be black, that could be Hispanic, that could be gay, that could be the disabled. Anyone that may fall into what's nowadays has been qualified as a protected class, you're opening yourself up to all sorts of repercussions as a result thereof, really and truly. So, and I hear what you're saying, Robert, but again, at the same time, we're talking about privately held platforms. So if they don't want you there, and if they don't want you to allow you access, then it's going to happen. It's no different. Look at it like this. Let me analogize this way if I can. You got no smoking places. That's a discrimination against people that smoke. They were able to smoke for years.
But
what
smoking
happened?
is not a protected class,
No.
but please continue.
But the point is this.
No, I get what you're saying.
But the point is this. As soon as they made a determination that smoke was injurious to others around, especially secondhand smoke, what did they do? You can't smoke in restaurants anymore. You can't smoke in clubs anymore. A lot of the casinos in Vegas are non-smoking
Hell,
anymore.
at friggin' Santa Monica, you could smoke anywhere in the public city.
Right. So that's my whole point. So now if you have this guy, Alex Jones, on InfoWars that's disseminating all this information they now consider to be injurious, then they feel that they have to take measures to stop that, to prevent that. At least say, hey, you can say whatever you want to say, but hell, you just can't say it here.
But Robert, are you saying that they attack more right people in
Of
that way than
course.
left people?
Of course. There's this sentiment, there's this huge double standard, which I think Candace Owens is very good at showing, which is if you're racist against white people, it's fine. And that's not correct. I mean, that's exactly the opposite of the MLK speech, right? Of we should all look at each other based on our merit, our individual traits, not on the color of our skin first, right? And it shouldn't matter which way you're looking at it. There was no how should I say this? Preconditions to that statement.
It's a very Marxian way to look at things, in my view, because under the Marxist way, he or she who controls the means of production,
But
in this case, they'd be the whites, and so they cannot be racist because they own the means of production. Believe me, it's a Marxist way to look at things.
If you believe that, then I ask you to look at what's going on.
I don't believe it.
Well, if somebody believes that, and who's listening to this, I would ask them to look at what's going on in South Africa right now, and it would scare the pants off of you. in that area, that's pure democracy as they're going. They are voting to take land away from whites and redistribute it to the black majority.
Well, they've been doing it by force, not necessarily in South Africa, but in other countries in Africa for years.
In South Africa, there's very dangerous.
But that's been going on for a long time, because with the ending of apartheid, that's exactly what happened. You had a lot of the Africans that were there who felt that their land had been stolen from them, and yes, they were taking their land back by force. Because let's be honest, in the total scheme of things and in that narrow sense, you had a lot of Africans whose property was stolen from them. Women were raped, kids were killed in order for them to take that over. You have to understand, you had an entire race of people that were subjugated. So then all of a sudden, once they got their power back, then the rebellion ensued. Now, was it graphic? Was it violent? Absolutely, it most certainly was. But you can't say that I wasn't surprised that it occurred. I wasn't surprised at all.
Well, firstly, isn't that the exact message that Nelson Mandela wanted to warn people against?
Absolutely.
That you can't, correct hundreds of years wrongs ago, so to speak, with violence today. It's just going to create more violence.
No, and I agree with you. He, as a matter of fact, when it was occurring, he came out against it. He tried to stop it.
In fact, with his death, it seems to have spiraled out of control out there without his moral leadership. Because I've been watching a lot of news that's been escalating in that area. And they were talking about, by the way, Ted, I've heard that argument that the whites in South Africa had done all of this to the indigenous black community. But I was learning more about the history of South Africa, and now I know we're going off this. But that was an undeveloped area prior to the whites' arrival in the 1600s, my understanding was.
Okay, so now they should be just beholden?
No, but
because that's what it sounds like.
But they were also saying that apparently 60% of all land in South Africa is held by blacks, about private ownership. They're talking about taking away apartments from white people, like a condo. You know, it's crazy. That's what I'm saying. It's not just the farmers who are being murdered in these random attacks and have these posses that they've created, like a community security, right? Because you can't count on the police out there. It's like the Wild West. But all I'm saying is this. If we can see that there is a call for racial violence, black against white in South Africa, and there it's a real threat, an imminent threat that's been acted on every day. Why is it okay to make such threats here in America? Because we assume that such a threat is not real, because it can't be acted upon. It's only real if it's white against black. You know, all of the violence back and forth, obviously it's saddening, right? It's kind of exhausting. I don't know how people can keep it up, to be truthful.
Yeah, but here's the issue that I have what you're saying. When you're talking about, black against white, it's not just black against white, it's white against blacks as well. Because let me tell you something that you'll never have to worry about, Robert, and neither will Steve, and neither will Mike. You will never have to sit your son down and say, when you get pulled over by a cop, be careful you don't behave in a way that you could end up being shot. You will never have to look at your son and worry that when you get pulled over...
I've had that conversation with my son.
I've had that conversation with my son, too.
But again, you look at the number as a comparative. I don't hear a lot about white teenagers being shot. I don't hear about a lot about white men being shot when they get pulled over by the cops. Because I can tell you, I've known friends that get pulled over, and just by virtue of the fact that they're black, you get out and you lay down, you kiss the concrete. You put your hands behind your back, and that could just be for a traffic stop. I remember my own personal experience. I was given a Jaguar as a gift because of how good a job I did. When I got that Jag, I told my boss, I'm going to get pulled over because he had mistakenly put the temporary tags in the right front windshield as opposed to in the back. He said, Ted, I've been driving this car for 3 months. I've never been pulled over. I got pulled over the day that I drove it. And as soon as the man pulled me over, I pointed in the windshield and I said, there's the registration. I pulled it out and I handed it to him. My whole point is this. And I think, I can't remember the woman's name because she really irritated me, but there was a woman I think that was out of Texas that got pulled over and she pulled into her parking lot and her and the cop got into a tussle. And I remember when he was taking her back to the station, and she was talking to him about why she was treated the way that she was, or why cops treat blacks the way that they do. And I applaud the man for his honesty, but it was scary as well. He said that's because of the fact that whites look at blacks as being violent. We just don't trust you. We just don't. That's why we treat you differently. I can tell you how many times I've been in stores, and when I was a younger man, and being followed around. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I'm trying to shop, but I got followed around. The unfortunate thing is, as a people, we have a certain stigma.
I was about to use that word, stigma. Correct. That's like the right term.
That we just cannot shake no matter. And sometimes we are our own worst enemy. And I'll own that too. We've had discussions on this show about the things that have happened in public when you had blacks crying foul or saying that the cops were doing something wrong. I'm like, no, you were the one that instigated this whole process. You have to look at your behavior first that resulted in how you were treated. You behave in a certain fashion, then everything should be fine. But we still have a stigma that we can't shake. I think racism, discrimination or prejudice in any form, I don't care what color your skin is just wrong. Again, it's no different than the conversation we had on this show when it came to going to colleges. As far as quotas were concerned, it's a slippery slope. It just is. I don't want to be chosen or saying, okay, you were chosen to come to this college because you're black. No, I want to be chosen because of my merit, because I earned that. But again, we can't shake the stigma.
And I couldn't agree more. And we could spend another half hour or hour on this, but unfortunately, we are out of time. For my chief, yes, awesome, fantastic.
You're leading it off. Everyone has an opinion.
For my chief of staff, Dr. Michael Zyma, for the best dressed man in workers' compensation and obviously the friggin' voice of reason, my protege, attorney Robert Ozeron, engineer Scott Walton on the board, A1 Law, Santa Monica Tickets, ABC Rugs, and of course, we could not continue to do this without all of the fantastic people at WorkCompCentral that continue to support and approve of this valuable project, including, but not limited to, Leaf File and Jake Paris. My name is Steve Appel from legendary Uncle Studios, and we'll be back again next week on another edition of Work Comp Matters.
Maybe next time we'll pick up.